Chapter 9. Revan stared at the flickering topographic map of Rekiad on the Ebon Hawk's navigation screens. The glacier-covered world had never been settled. No cities or villages dotted his screen. The scans revealed nothing but a frozen wasteland of ice and snow, stretching off for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. According to Kreias, the Mandalorians set up a temporary landing field somewhere on the planet's surface. The clans that had gathered on Rekiad worked together to maintain and protect the vessels there. It was effectively neutral ground. Outside the landing field, however, each clan laid claim to its own territory, a claim they were willing to fight to defend. Neither Revan nor Kreias thought it was wise to take the Ebon Hawk to the communal landing strip. Outsiders were unwelcome among the Mandalorians. Kreias would have better luck dealing directly with Clan Ordo, his own people. The original plan was to land within walking distance of Clan Ordo's base camp and approach on foot. Using spaceports was rarely a preferred option for the kind of smugglers and miscreants who had owned the Ebon Hawk throughout its history, and many had installed customized upgrades to allow the ship to land in less than ideal conditions. But Revan doubted ever intended to visit a world as inhospitable as Rekiad, and he was starting to have second thoughts. Gale force winds hammered the ship's hull, causing it to buck and lurch, and a blizzard of swirling snow and ice limited the range of the Hawk's sensors. To get close enough for the topographic scan, Revan had to bring them in only a few hundred meters above the surface of the world, close enough that one wrong move could send them crashing into the surface. T3 beeped anxiously at Revan's side, crowding the pilot's chair as Revan fought to keep the ship level. "Get Kreias up here," Revan barked. "Tell him to check those grid coordinates again." The little astronic droid spun around and sped off in search of the third member of their crew. A gust of wind caused the ship to veer down and to the left. The strength bit into Revan's flesh as he jammed the throttle forward and yanked back on the stick, pulling the ship up out of a steep dive moments before it hit the ground. The ship veered off course, and suddenly a massive glacier jutting up from the planet's frozen surface materialized on the nav display. Revan banked hard to avoid plowing into the wall of ice, but even the lightning-fast reactions of a Jedi could entirely overcome the Hawk's momentum. The ship was spared a direct hit, but its underside clipped a sharp outcropping of ice. The impact sent the Hawk into a spiraling, twisting roll. Revan wrenched the stick from side to side, fighting for control. Using the Force, he was able to anticipate and react to the erratic flight with instantaneous precision adjustments, keeping the ship aloft until it regained its equilibrium. The immediate crisis averted, Revan took the Hawk up to a safer altitude and set the autopilot. Then he slumped in his chair and let out a long, low sigh. After a few seconds, he straightened up, readjusted his restraint belts, and checked the instrument panel. A blinking red warning light confirmed his fears. The impact with the glacier had damaged the landing gear. Revan muttered a curse under his breath, just as a much louder string of profanity came from Kreias staggering into the cockpit. T3 rolled in after him, peeping indignantly.
"Were you trying to smash us into Greepo back there?"
Kreias grumbled, plopping down into the cockpit seat.
"I thought you knew how to fly this rusted slag heap."
"I thought you said Clan Ordo had set up a camp somewhere on this frozen rock," Revan shot back. "Couldn't see a blasted thing on those grid coordinates you gave me."
"Maybe they moved to another location,"
Kreias said with a shrug.
"Can't have gone too far, though. Not in these conditions. Do a ground scan of the area, and they'll probably turn up."
"That's what I was doing," Revan replied through gritted teeth. "Turns out it's a good way to get up close and personal with a glacier." Kreias glanced over at the warning light.
"Is that why that red light's blinking?"
"The landing gear got smashed up when we clipped the glacier."
"You couldn't just fly around it."
Revan rolled his eyes.
"Go down for another look,"
Kreias advised after a few moments of strained silence.
"Clan Order's gotta be close by."
"Even if we find them, then what? You'll expect me to bring the ship in on busted landing gear?"
"You're a smart guy,"
Kreias answered, shifting to get comfortable in his seat.
"You'll think of something."
There wasn't much point in continuing the argument, so Revan let it drop. Yet he couldn't help but wonder the recent change he would noticed in Kreias. As long as he would known then, the Mandalorian had sensed an underlying tension in him, like a soldier in enemy territory. He was always ready for a fight. As a Mandalorian, he was never fully accepted by those in the Republic, and he knew it. Now, however, he seemed different. He was still gruff and taciturn, but ever since they had left Coruscant, he would be less grim, more relaxed. He was eager to be back among his own people, and he was about to let a few minor setbacks like a missing camp or damaged landing gear stop him. To be fair, Revan had no intention of abandoning their quest either. There was too much at stake to turn back. Which meant Cantress was right. The only real option was to keep looking for Khan Order's camp and hope they got lucky. Revan brought the Hawk low again, but this time he throttled it back to half speed. The swirling wind still made for a rough ride, but at least he would have more time to react if something went wrong. "See if you can do something to give our sensors a boost," he said to T3. The little astromech chirped with pleasure and extended a small probe from a panel in his side to interface directly with the Hawk systems. While T3 worked, Revan began a standard search pattern with the original coordinates for the camp at the center. Taking the Hawk around in ever-widening circles, he spiraled outward, letting the sensors scan the ground for signs of life. Suddenly T3 began beeping excitedly. Cantress leaned forward to look at the scanner's display.
"I think your droid's got some rust on the brain,"
he said.
"I don't see anything."
Revan knew better than to doubt the little astromech. "Can you enhance the image?" he asked T3. T3 responded with a low whistle, and a second later a static-filled thermal image appeared on the screen. The details were difficult to make out, but it appeared to be a small collection of tents and temporary shelters built against the leeward side of a small mountain of ice and snow.
"Could be them,"
Cantress admitted, reaching out one of his massive hands to give T3 a friendly pat on the head. The droid squawked an indignant protest, and he quickly pulled his hand back. "Doesn't look like there is a landing strip at the camp," Revan noted. "See any place for us to touch down?" The display zoomed out as T3 adjusted the Hawk scanners to pan rapidly back and forth across the snow. A few seconds later they zoomed in again. "Perfect," Revan said with a smile. "Nice work, T3.
"Oh, that's not a landing strip,"
Cantress cautioned.
"It's a giant snowdrift."
"With the landing gear shot, we are going to need something to cushion the blow when we hit the ground."
"You really think this'll work?"
"Sure," Revan replied. "But you would better strap yourself in, just in case." Cantress scrambled to lock in his safety belt as Revan sent the Hawk into its descent. T3 scooted across the cockpit to the metal braces anchored to the floor and locked his wheels in with a metallic thunk. Fighting wind and gravity, Revan struggled to keep the damned ship level as he took it down, seconds before they touched ground. A blast of wind grabbed the Ebon Hawk and pitched it hard to starboard. Revan jammed the stick to port, desperately trying to keep the ship from flipping over. It slammed into the snowbank at a 45-degree angle, carving a 50-meter-long trench in the powder before finally coming to rest. Looking through the small cockpit window, Revan could see nothing but blue, white flakes. The entire front half of the ship was buried in the drift, but the sensors indicated that, apart from the already damaged landing gear, the Hawk had survived relatively unscathed. More important, so had its passengers. Revan carefully unbuckled his safety belt, knowing he would have bruises where the straps had dug into him during the collision. Beside him, Cantress was doing the same. T3 simply unlocked his wheels from the braces and rolled free.
"I guess sometimes it's not so bad being a droid."
Cantress groaned as he stood up, rubbing his right shoulder with his left hand. "You mean like when you are marching through a blizzard?" Revan asked. "This snowdrift's at least 5 kilometers from the campsite." Cantress only grunted in reply, while the big Mandalorian gathered the gear and supplies for their trek from the cargo hold. Revan and T3 ran diagnostics on the Hawk to determine the full extent of the damage. "Doesn't look too bad," Revan commented when they were done. "Think you can fix it up while we head off to the camp?" T3 beeped twice. "It's going to be hard for you to keep up there in the snow," Revan reminded him. "Besides, someone has to stay and guard the ship." This Dromek reluctantly whistled his consent. "You get started on repairs. I will go give Cantress a hand." It took them almost an hour before they were ready to venture out into the frigid wasteland. They were bundled up head to toe in thick winter garb. Snow pants, hooded jackets, scarves, goggles, heavy boots, and fur-lined gloves. All of it white to provide camouflage in case they ran into trouble. Cantress had armed himself with a heavy repeating blaster carbine. He offered a similar weapon to Revan, but the Jedi shook his head.
"You don't want to be swinging the lightsaber around when we get to the camp,"
Cantress said.
"Jedi aren't too popular out here."
Revan frowned and then nodded. He knew Cantress had a point, but he didn't relish the idea of lugging the massive gun along. He picked up a pair of blaster pistols. "I will get by with these," he said, sliding them into the straps under the hip.
"Suit yourself,"
Kreias said with a shrug. Then he added,
"When we get to the camp, let me do the talking. Remember, these are my people."
"I can live with that," Revan said, hitting the switch to lower the cargo hold's loading ramp. "But if we are going to get there before dark, we would better get moving." They maneuvered the vessel they had loaded up with supplies down the ramp and out into the raging blizzard. The howling wind threatened to knock them off their feet and made conversation almost impossible. The swirling snow almost blinded them, but Revan had entered the camp's coordinates on a portable locator to keep them on track, and he used hand gestures to communicate their route to Kreias. The heavy layers of clothing made the sub-zero conditions bearable. The hard labor of trudging through the snow of uneven terrain helped warm them up too. After almost 2 hours of slow progress, Revan saw the dim outline of a small mountain ahead of them. He signaled to Kreias, indicating that the camp was on the other side. The Mandalorian nodded and signaled back that they needed to step up the pace. Revan nodded his agreement. The light around them was fading as Rekiad's sun, invisible through the storm, slowly set. The last thing they needed was to have to press on in total darkness. As they skirted the base of the mountain and reached the leeward side, the wind died to almost nothing. It wasn't long before they could see the soft glow of lights from the camp. Gradually more